Okay, well, welcome everybody to our Monday, November the 20th, 2023 Business Board meeting. I call the meeting to order, and I welcome our treasurer to call roll, please.
Mr. Moore?
Here.
Mrs. Schreiber?
Here.
Mrs. Mulligan?
Here.
Dr. Urso?
I'm here.
And Mrs. Stewart?
Here.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, comments, curiosities? Nothing? Mr. Bertram?
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Schreiber?
Yes.
Mrs. Stewart?
Yes.
Mrs. Mulligan?
Yes.
Dr. Urso?
Yes. All right, under presentations, it looks like we have two of them. The first one being the therapy dog program. I'll turn the mic over to our superintendent, Ms. Hauser, to get that started.
It's an exciting night, one of the final stages before we actually enter into therapy dogs in Middletown City Schools. So we have with us this evening our Student Services Director, Susanna Davis, Eric Sotzing, our business manager, Marco Cato, one of our SROs, and one of the guests of honor, Haley. One of our therapy dogs, which, like I was explaining tonight, is one of the last steps that we need to take in order for therapy dogs to enter into Middletown City Schools and have us all covered. So you're going to see the regulations for our therapy dogs in the consent agenda tonight. You're going to hear a little bit about therapy dog regulations with our presentation. So why don't we have our presenters and guest of honor come on up to the podium, and then I'll let them share the good news and the information behind the therapy dogs. If you remember, we had therapy dogs the dollars allocated in our ESSER recovery plan. So now you're seeing the final stages of the project. Okay, take it away.
Thank you, Mrs. Hauser. Good evening, Mr. Urso, Mrs. Mulligan, members of the board. We are honored to be here tonight to highlight some of the key components of the therapy dog program. We highlight the program and the associated regulations that are on tonight's consent agenda, as Mrs. Hauser introduced. So the exploration of the therapy dog program was included in our initial ESSER plan, and it has become evident that therapy dogs provide comfort and support to students in schools. Throughout our research, it is very clear that therapy dogs can reduce anxiety and stress in students and can be used in a multitude of behavior situations as well as counseling situations. So some of the benefits of the therapy dog program, the research also documents that it can have an absolutely direct impact on individual students. So outside of just groups of students, small groups of students, really the impact of a therapy dog program really begins to talk about fostering empathy and compassion while also improving social skills. We see it certainly a very rapid impact with students with disabilities specifically, and their ability to engage in different social situations with dogs that perhaps they might not be typically willing to do with another peer. So again, another added benefit of that therapy dog program. And then finally, as our core business being academics, there is a strong correlation between the presence of therapy dogs and improved academic performance. One of the very direct ways we see that is increased attendance. And so students have that desire to interact with the dog. It becomes another piece of the educational experience. Bringing the students in the door, as we well know, is one of the first keys to having them grow academically. And so very direct with academic performance and the motivation and the engagement. Oftentimes students know if they achieve certain milestones that they perhaps might get rewarded with the ability to interact with the dog, and again brings them just another added layer of what it means to be engaged with their school and connected with their school. We always say we want them to be connected with adults in the school. This is an extension. Throughout the fall, we have been honored to have School Resource Officer Marco Kaido and his family have had the opportunity to foster several therapy dogs on behalf of Circletail. And so I invite Marco to the podium to speak about the interactions that he's had directly with Circletail, which is the certified therapy dog organization, as well as the firsthand impact that Marco has seen with therapy dogs in the schools and the interactions.
How's everybody doing? For those who don't know me, I'm Marco Kaido. Primarily, I'm a school resource officer at the high school. And during the summer, my wife Julie and I went through the training to be a therapy dog handler through Circletail. And just a quick rundown, Circletail is an organization that they breed and raise the dogs until they're about 2 years old. Their initial goal is to have them as service dogs, so people with physical handicaps or things like that, they have single handlers, and the dogs can do things like open doors, turn on lights, get necessary items for somebody that would need them. Well, what they find out is not all dogs are suited for necessarily one handler. In Hallie's case, the one that I have with me today, her nose distracts her like crazy, so somebody that's in a wheelchair or something like that isn't necessarily suited for, or Hallie's not necessarily suited for them. So what they do is they career change them into facility dogs. So they're super social, they're calm, gentle, and what we've been able to do is kind of get dogs. I was a former canine handler on the road. So I carried some of that experience into a totally different type of dog. And what I've found through fostering is, first of all, it kind of opens up communications for the kids and an adult, like especially me standing in a police uniform. She's a great conversation starter, or he, whichever dog we have. They're great conversation starters. And then the first thing I noticed when going in some buildings is just the staff interactions. I literally saw teachers that I would never dream could even drop down to a knee, get all the way on the floor, and roll around with her. So it's a great opportunity to kind of just relieve some of that stress. And then with kids, what we'll do is there's 2 teachers that are going to go through the training, and then a counselor as well. 2 of the teachers are Hope Squad leaders, so it gives them an opportunity to be building handlers. So, I can do my work day, bring, in this case would be Hallie, to the school, and they can handle the dogs on kind of a scheduled basis and have available for the students. Specifically, we had a student that was full of anxiety starting out school, sitting in a counselor's office, uncontrollably crying. As soon as I brought a dog in and she laid next to him, it was completely calming. Just even for the counselor to be able to communicate with them. So, questions?
Are we the first area school to have a therapy dog?
We are not. I'd love to say we are. We are not. This is Circletail in general has dogs in Milford schools, Mason schools, Lakota, Cincinnati Public, and they're in children's hospitals. So we are definitely not the first ones, and it's a growing trend even among small school districts.
I think it's working. I feel calmer just already. I sense the impact. No, thank you.
How much does it cost a year to support the dog?
So the initial cost is they're about $10,000 to purchase them.
That was the ESSER money, right?
Correct.
Correct.
And then also Central raised $10,000 also, if you recall. Remember Mr. Sipple sleeping on the roof?
Oh,
That was
yeah.
all part of raising money for the dog.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
And I would estimate for vet and food and things like that, probably around $1,500 to $2,000 a year, maybe. I'm not sure on those
Oh,
exact numbers just yet.
yeah. Wow.
Now, will she remain with you and your family for
So,
the
yes,
duration of her time here?
So I would be, myself and Julie would be the host family for the dog, and then, like I said, when we get to schools, she'll have other handlers within the school.
How does one, and I'm not sure if this is a question for you, Marco, or Debbie, how do we evaluate the effectiveness of having a dog? I 100% feel better just seeing her, but I don't know, I don't know if that's a good evaluation or not.
Well, I don't know that you can necessarily put a number on it. I think that if you see interactions, you're more than welcome to come follow me around the school one day and see the kind of the interactions that happen. I really don't know that. I don't know how we put a number on that. We could maybe talk to Lakota and Milford and Mason. They have very successful programs, and see if they've found some way to quantify some.
Okay, thank you.
put some number on
No,
it.
I was just wondering if there was something that they use, but I 100% believe that people do better, feel better, and are socially better when they have a pet. So-
And that's perception data, right?
Yeah,
Perception
exactly. That's perception data.
Yeah, I mentioned before that I've seen children respond to anything in the classroom, even a fish in a bowl. But a dog is something you can touch. And I have had
Such a good
the
example.
opportunity to meet that doll baby. And she is just amazing. I mean, she is so gentle, but she likes her bones, her treats.
Oh, yes,
She
yes.
likes her treats.
Yes, she does.
So if you want to make friends, bring a treat.
Do other districts have a dog in each of their buildings, or is it
So
certain
it-
buildings?
Yes, Milford, I believe we're in class now with some of the teachers at the high school, and there's a dog there. I think it's the last Milford school to get one, and their entire school district will have one. I believe Mason has 6 or 8. So I don't know.
How many buildings?
Generally, what happens is you see a value in it, and it seems like every school gets one.
Do the dogs ever travel to a school other than where they're normally placed?
So that's a good question. Ideally, since I travel to the different schools, the goal is to try to find one that is capable of working in multiple buildings. Initially, I think she would learn the high school, but we have a dog specifically picked with me with prior handler experience that is willing to kind of bounce around and check out other schools. So ideally, I would travel to other schools too.
Okay.
And would Hallie stay at the school all day or half day or
She'd be there all day.
all day? Same classroom or?
So
travel
she'll have a place in my office. She'll have availability to the counselor, and then the 2 teachers that are going through training will have the availability to take
Take her around.
and take her to the classroom.
Thank you.
So the dogs don't get upset when they're out of their normal setting then, I guess?
No, I mean, they have extensive training. They're very calm and even sitting here, she's
Yeah.
laying here, itching her collar right now. But they're calm and very good in different settings. And they're exposed. That's part of the foster program that Julie and I are doing, and we've been doing all summer long. And through the fall, is exposing them to as many things as we can. Different environments, different structures, anything that we can possibly do, crowds. So, yeah, we evaluate that. And then once the dog is assigned to us, we have 5 months to figure out if that dog's going to work in that setting. And if it doesn't, then they'll find one that is.
Do they wear antlers during the holidays?
I'm sure she will.
They could. They could. Thanks, Mark.
So again, as Marco alluded to, these are working dogs. So to the question, they will be on a daily schedule, much like our students. They will have a schedule that they follow on a daily basis because we do want them engaged. That's a critical part of their ability is they need to be engaged. They need to be working. And so we will craft in conjunction with the principal what that daily schedule looks like for that dog to be able to interact as much as possible throughout the day. Marco alluded to this, the beauty of our partnership with Circle Tails, they have an internship program, and so we have the opportunity to pilot this program in 2 Middletown schools beginning in January. So what that will allow us to do is to truly evaluate the impact that the therapy dog program is having through a multitude of different avenues and before we make any formal commitment. And so at this point, we are tentatively looking at the schedule for Middletown High School and for Central Academy. In addition, we know that there are regulations and legal considerations, as Mrs. Hauser alluded to, so I invite Eric to the podium to talk through some of those regulations and the legal considerations that we bring before you tonight for this final step in the process.
As Susanna said, my name is Eric Sotzing, business manager for the school district. My role in this process was really more of the nuts and bolts of how the things kind of operate when it comes to the therapy dog program. And in the beginning, one of the key considerations is how is this going to operate from a structural standpoint? In how are we going to set it up to make sure that things are in the right order, that we have selection processes, that we have regulations and areas around it for it to be operating, and how those roles would go. The second consideration that came out of that is if we do go into the therapy dog program, is there any legal or any liability ramifications that would come out of us implementing that? And our first consideration for that was, okay, let's talk to our insurance carrier and make sure, number one, we have coverage. Number two, what are the things that we should be doing in order to make sure that we are limiting our liability in this particular situation? And that first call was very helpful and identified really 3 considerations that the insurance company felt was very important for us to properly put this program in place and to protect ourselves from liability. And from that was generated the regulations that you have before you tonight that are going to be approved, and that's a key component. First one was to implement a policy, which you've already done, that allows for us to do that identifies us as officially starting a therapy dog program. You've already completed that at the last meeting. That step is done, so we've done that. The second one, which is tonight, is the regulations. The regulations, I'm not going to go through all the specifics that are in there, but it does identify things like how does a building request a dog? How do we assign a handler? What is the handler responsibilities? What are the animal health care criteria that needs to be in place in order for that animal to be here? What is the veterinary care? What is the basic minimum vaccinations that those have? We go all the way down to facility-related questions and signage. All of those things are included in the regulations that were put before you. So it's really the nuts and the bolts, the things that we need to put in place to make sure that we go through and successfully implement that and protect ourselves as we enjoy all the benefits that were talked about earlier in this process. And then the final piece that was put in place is a recommendation or an application process and an onboarding, which is one of the things that when we go through this after the regulations, those pieces will go together and put it all into one package that we then have a listing that we've done, all the things that are in the regulations that says this dog has these vaccinations and all those things are in, and that it's verified and the dog is placed in that particular location. One of the things that I can tell you and I brought up earlier is we're not the first program that has this or the first school that has this. There's multiple. And in fact, in developing these regulations, our team reached out to multiple school districts to talk about what went well and what didn't. Some had great regulations in place and their program continues. Others have made some mistakes along the way and it doesn't. So what we tried to do is learn from that and bake those into the regulations that you have now in order to make this program successful. We feel confident that we've done that. We feel confident that the regulations are in place to definitely protect us from a liability standpoint, to put this on a great foundation going forward. And Obviously, it's a learning experience for us. We're gonna go through, we'll make, we're gonna make adjustments as we need to the regulations going forward, but we feel very confident from where we're at from a starting perspective. So if you approve those regulations tonight, that is the second component of what we need to do, and really kind of solidifies up our liability piece from an insurance company perspective. So at this point, I'm gonna turn it back over to Susanna for a conclusion.
So in conclusion, we look forward to the possibility of piloting this program starting in January in our schools. We certainly appreciate and thank you for your consideration of the regulations, as Eric said, that are before you this evening. That will be the final step in this process to allow us to bring the dogs in and to start to truly evaluate the effectiveness of the impact on our students. And as you heard Marco allude to, our staff as well. So at this time, if there's any questions, we'll be more than happy to take those. I know you sprinkled them in throughout, but if there's anything remaining.
No, it's good to know that, I mean, we've been able to be privy to years and years of experiences that we won't make the same mistakes that other districts have. That gives us confidence that it should be successful. And appreciate you and your family for taking on the time and the training to make sure this is successful. So thank you.
Any other questions? Just want to say thank you to everyone for all the work that you put into the therapy dog program. I know we have lots of students very, very excited about January and that day to come and the therapy dogs in the buildings. Our other dog's name is Tucker. Yep, it's Central. Yep, so we'll have
Haley and
Tucker and Haley. Yep, Hallie.
Hallie.
How?
Hallie.
Yep. So,
Great. Thank you.
thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Did you work?
Yeah, you guys like to see her?
Yeah, it's like.
She already licked the chicken off my finger.
Randy, is your report going to be as exciting as this?
I did not want to follow them. I have an unfair disadvantage here.
He's nice.
We didn't want to talk to her. She was going to be here. She's beautiful. Thank you. Bella would have been in your lap. I know.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, equally exciting is our next presentation, our 5-year forecast, and Mr. Bertram. So when Mr. Bertram's ready, we'll allow him to follow the
Hard show to
dogs.
follow.
Maybe I should just wait till the show dog leaves.
Yeah.
I'll start by saying that, once again, we have a financial forecast that's very strong and very good for the district. We did base it on a 44.5% increase in residential valuations, Class 1 valuations. And that is coming from the county auditor, the $1.1 billion they gave me in new values compared to the $850 million we had just a year ago. As we talked about before, that our state legislators were trying to put some legislation together late in the year to make changes to the valuations and/or the collection rates that taxpayers would be paying. They did not get that done. They decided to take breaks and focus on the elections. And currently, I can tell you House Bill 187 is still sitting out there on the table as an option, and that would change valuations by approximately 15 to 18, maybe 20%. And there's also Senate Bill 153 that they've had some legislation or some talks, I don't know that it's in the legislation, about possibly lowering the 20 mil floor to something less than 20 mils. That may take a change in the Ohio Constitution to get that done. But with that said, we definitely know our legislators are going to start hearing about these large increases. It's just not our county. There's another 30 counties out there that are going through this here in Ohio this cycle year for updates and reevaluations, that they're going to want to do something in the new year as well. They could even do something before the end of this legislature. And Don't know what's going to happen, but I do know it's not going to affect the tax bills that are coming out in February in Butler County. So the rates are what the rates are. Rumor has it, if they make any changes, it would affect the second half of the tax year, not the first half. So any adjustments would be made twice as large to effectively affect the first half and the second half equally. So with that said, since the first half of a tax year happens to be the second half of our fiscal year, January through June, we're only going to talk about fiscal year '24. How's this going to affect us for fiscal year '24? So I'm going to give you high-level notes and then assure you that I will be back in December for Part B of this evaluation, that I'm going to give you some alternate figures if Plan A or Plan B goes into effect for the state. So now this is very high level. This is a best case scenario. As far as the school goes, I hope it doesn't change, but I do suspect that it probably will change in the second half of next year. All right, so again, we're talking about 24 only, fiscal year 24. Beginning cash balance for the beginning of the year this year, $21,665,013. I am forecasting an ending cash balance of $27,312,652. That's a net gain of $5.6 million that we're looking at this year. Very high number. All right. State funding, local taxes, and all other revenue for current fiscal year. Our state share is nearly 60%. We'll end the year at about 58% on the state share. Local taxes for our revenue equate to 35%, and then all other revenue, including federal funding, is a 7%. Under the current fiscal year, when we look at cost, projected salaries and benefits are going to be 66% of our cost, and we're looking at just over $40 million in salaries and just under $14 million in benefits for $53,964,000. Purchase services, equaling 26% of our expenses, is just under $21 million. All other expenditures will come in at 8%, including supplies, capital, debt, and other operating advances, transfers, and uses, come in at just under $6.7 million. Projected revenue versus expenditures. This is getting down into the nitty-gritty. As you can see, revenue escalates each and every year. Expenditures, likewise. In the first 3 years of this forecast, revenues exceed expenditures. So we got positive cash balance growth in those 3 years. Starting the fourth year, we're just over $1 million, I think $1.6 million in deficit spending. And then it jumps to about 4.3 or 4.5 million in year 2028. As I've said every year, don't focus on year 4 and 5. A lot's going to change between now and then. It's probably not going to come to fruition. But even if it does, we have extensive cash balance, well above the 10% that's required by policy. And you can see on the right graph there that our cash balance does grow through 2026 and starts to fade in 2027, 2028. However, we are still sitting over 20% in a cash reserve if that does come to fruition. So we're still very healthy after 5 years of the forecast. And I would like to note that this is including an additional 14,500,000 that we have set aside in this budget to help us continue some of the expenses for the learning loss that we occurred during the pandemic. So we're not cutting down to zero. All the staff that we've hired, all the services that we've added, we're going to be able to factor in $14 million or so of those expenses so our kids can get caught up. And we're still working through those numbers.
Is that, is any of that money grant money as opposed to budget money for the kids to catch up?
Some of that can transfer to the grants. And
Okay.
example is where we have training, instead of it coming to the general fund, we have enough in our Title II-A that will transfer to Title II-A.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, but I did set aside $14.5 million out of the general fund.
Okay, thank you.
So we have $14.5 million plus other grants to work with to offer these services for our children. When we look at just the revenue growth, we're looking at about 7% growth through the forecast period. But we're looking at about 8% in expenditures. That's where you're going to see deficit spending in years 4 and 5. But again, that expenditure growth is intentional, so we can add these services in for our children. Nice little factor here, days cash outstanding, or days cash on hand as it's known as. As you can see, we've always operated right around 90 to 100 days in cash on hand. That will jump to 122 days, and it could drop as low as 78 days in the 5th year of the forecast. Plenty of money. We're in good shape. Looking at just the cash balance reserve, you can look at the revenue versus the expenditures, the black versus the gray, and the yellow line is our cash reserve. We are sitting over 20 million for the entire forecast period, and we get as high as, I want to say it's about 27 or 28 million. So it's pretty flatlined, really, for a forecast. It's well intentioned there. And a number here, and Debbie asked me about this morning, and didn't realize I had this graph for you tonight, or I would have shared it this morning with the team. We've always been well below the state average in how much we spend per pupil. And I think the state average now is probably right around $15,000 or $16,000 per student. So we're very efficient. We do very well, especially having a high needs type of district with the kids that we service. But we do see very high growth coming over the next 5 years because, again, of the intentional spend that we are doing for our kids. And again, I don't know what the state average, with inflation the way it is, I imagine we're still going to be at or below state averages when we get to the end of the
Is there a place
forecast.
on here where we'll be looking at our per pupil cost?
Our per pupil cost is the graph that you see on the screen right now. Estimated per pupil cost this year will be $14,148.
Okay, thanks.
Yes. And that's all in. And then the final slide, even though 14,000, 15, 16, 17,000 sounds like a lot per pupil, which it really isn't, especially when I compare it to what we used to pay for an inmate when I worked in the big house. We're actually about 20 to 25% per year for a student cost as compared to what it costs to incarcerate an individual. And I just use that as a comparison because I know the two. Our daily cost per pupil in fiscal year '24 is going to be $79. And when you look at total cost, our residents are only responsible for 25% of that cost, the way that this is factored in. So we're $20 a day is basically what our taxpayers are paying to educate every child in our district. I think that's a pretty powerful number to know that they get a big bang for the buck for what it costs per pupil.
How do we stand? I know from time to time you pointed out to us the amount of our total expenses that we would attribute to instruction, and are we doing well in that category?
We are doing well. In fact, since you brought that up, I'll share that in December when I come back. I'm not prepared for it tonight.
Okay.
But yeah, we put a lot into instruction, absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Especially with the ESSER dollars. We really infused a lot into it. Yes,
Thanks.
it's primarily where it goes. Great question. That's where it needs to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know this is very high level. I didn't get into the dirt like I normally do, into the weeds. But I think until we have more information from the state, I think it's just reassuring to know through the 5-year forecast, worst case scenario, we're doing very well. Or I should say best case scenario, we're doing very well. And in a worst-case scenario, we've got a lot of room to make adjustments. Even though we have that $14.5 million earmarked for additional services for our kids above and beyond the ESSER spend, if need be, if the state makes changes that do have a very negative impact on us, we can adjust through those expenses if we need to. So it's nice to know that we have that buffer available for us.
So you don't see any significant challenges in 25, 6, 7, and 8, those years when expenses are going up, cost per pupil is going up?
Yeah. At this time, no. I think we've got enough headwind with the carryover balance that we have that we can make adjustments to anything that occurs during those years. I know that, I can say with great certainty, short of the state doing something totally, that would totally flip us upside down, I don't see that happening because it'd flip a lot of districts upside down, that we're not going to need a levy through this forecast period or beyond in the near future, beyond it either, with the adjustments we're going to be able to make.
In recent years, has the May version of this varied much from the November version? Did you like to?
No.
So
Not
this
too
is-
much. May, the only thing in May, we've flipped a new year in November. We've added 28. In May, we only go out to 28, so next November, we'll flip to 29. So that's the big difference you see in November. In May, you don't see, it's an update
Okay,
from the
okay.
beginning of the year.
Okay.
So May's an update of November, and as long as my numbers are running good and we don't make a lot of significant changes, it's usually pretty close. Great question.
I have 3 questions. Does this take in consideration homeschool vouchers and charter schools and the students that would be allocated to those different entities?
Yes.
All
Yeah,
right, so
yeah, a
that's-
lot of that is already factored in. We can make assumptions. Right now I feel pretty good. We're pretty maxed out on the amount of vouchers that the district has traditionally paid for because there's not a lot of additional space in private schools for additional vouchers. The state has already put in rules that kids who have never attended here before are eligible for vouchers, but a lot of those are through the state budget and not the school budget.
Okay.
So what we're seeing there, the state's paying for, the school's no longer paying for. We've got the ones we've traditionally paid for that we're still paying for. So, yeah, I don't see a lot of damage coming there unless I see the lumber trucks pulling into John 23 and the other private schools and putting on huge additions.
Okay. On your one chart early in your presentation, it had the percentage of state funding to local taxes to all other revenues. And you had indicated multiple times through these different forecasts, as we are perceived to be wealthier,
Yes.
the state negotiates that by reducing its share of
Share.
the. As you look at the forecast, I mean, your software works through that, I assume.
It does. And when I come back in December and I lower the valuation or the revenue we receive from the valuation, because the state has no intention of lowering that $1.1 billion valuation. And that's what, in the eyes of the state, over a 3-year period, the difference between the $1.1 billion and the $850 million, $250 million, that's phased in over 3 years. So, it's growing in equal increments over 3 years. So once it hits that 3rd year, we're a lot richer in the 3rd year than we are in the 1st year, because you've only added a 3rd. So the state funding year over year, as it sees us getting wealthier, it says you don't need as much from the state, that your local taxpayers are now required to pay more. And when I factored in that 40% several months ago, that's where I made the comment, for every 3 additional dollars that you, the taxpayer, has to pay in taxes through that 5-year period, the state will realize 2 additional dollars, the district will realize 1 additional dollar of those $3. So the state is benefiting from it more than we are in that 5-year average. Up
But-
front, we get a little bit more, but each year we get a little bit less, and then it goes out to that 5th year where it's basically 2 to 1.
Will their property value, like, I know that your tax bill is itemized, and it shows the proportionality through what the library, senior citizens, and the
Yes.
big allotment is always the schools.
The
Does it,
largest.
does it detail that for them, that it shows that those dollars are going towards the state?
They won't see what goes to the state at all.
Okay.
They just see how that is incremented out per taxing entity, yes.
And I guess my last question, the Fair School Fund in Cup-Patterson, is that, any conversations in Columbus around that model? And I know that over the last few years, it's been a benefit to our district.
Oh, yes.
And partly why we haven't been looking for levies, et cetera, and been able to increase our per pupil is in part because of Cup-Patterson. Any conversations that you've heard that people are talking about that in a way that might be detrimental?
Yeah, under the current legislators, I think it's pretty solid that it's going to hit that third biennium budget, and the legislators I know of, especially in the House, it's solid. They really believe in it, think it's the best way to put a number on what it costs to educate our children. They want to see it through. Senate, I don't have as much confidence in the Senate on that side of things. They're not as pro-public school as the House is. But I think there's enough strength in the House that they do play a lot of quid pro quo with one another, that I think it's going to be very solid for that third year, unless there's major changes in the election cycles. That can always change things. But I actually factored in that third year on this forecast, so assuming that it is probably going to make it through on its third years 5 and 6 of the 6-year phase-in. Good question, though. Most of us feel pretty confident about it.
Okay, that statement you made about the $3, $2 goes to the state and $1. Now, I'm looking at this chart where it says that our local taxes contribute 35% of our income. So the 33% for the 1/3 of the increase, I mean, that's kind of in line, but the state funding is at 58%, but yet they're getting 2/3 of that $3.
Yeah. They're both growing. Both our local revenue and our state share is growing, but our state share will be growing at smaller proportion because of our wealth. They're going to actually give us less money than they would have if our wealth stayed at
okay.
$850 million versus $1.1 billion.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where you have to do a compare and contrast, and that's what I'll bring back next month so you can see those differences. Yeah, it'll be pretty powerful information once I get it together for you. It says a story, you know, I think we will owe our community an explanation, and we're going to work with Dan Wooler to put something together so they can understand. You know, most people look at their tax bill, those that see it, and yeah, they see that portion going to the schools. So what are you doing with all my money? Unless we explain that all that additional money isn't really the money that's coming to the school, they won't understand that. So we have to be prepared to be able to answer our taxpayers and explain to them why cause and effect of this revenue generation that they're paying. That, you know, we are realizing growth. We don't have to come back for levy because of some of that growth. However, not all of it is coming to the schools. It's disproportional. Yeah.
Other questions?
No, but I think that's a good idea to put that out there.
Yes.
I was not aware of that. I know many people who are not aware of that.
Oh, yeah.
And it looks, you know,
That we didn't put out a tax levy, we
Right.
didn't, you know, there's a lot of factors that create
Right.
change in your income tax, and they have to realize, yeah, that, we have to help them understand
Right.
why it's happening.
right.
Yeah, we're owed that to our community.
Yes.
These other documents you provided to us, could you just give me an idea what these are?
Yep, well, the first one is the actual 5-year forecast with the pretty blue and green lines on it. That gives you 3 years of history and then the 5 years of the forecast. That's the document the state will actually upload to the Ohio Department of Education. You ever want to go look up our forecasts, they're all out there. Everything we've sent in there. And then the 5-year, nice purple bar here, that is the assumptions that I submit with the 5-year forecast as well. That's also available on ODE. And then the third one I gave you is just
The slides
what I
that,
shared today. Yes, and all of these are out online as well. Thanks for asking, Chris.
Thank you for the presentation. Unless there are questions. All right, that was as good as the dogs. Always good news.
Well, I didn't go 45 minutes to an hour.
No, but it was good news that we have some stability financially, and so as good as the news about having dogs in our building, for sure. Our next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart. Any questions, anything to highlight? Anything within the consent agenda that needs to be brought out?
No, I'd like to see the field trips again. That's,
Yep, I was going to say, you see 2 field trips in there this time. You see
Yeah.
a field trip for our orchestra going to BGU for a competition. And then our 4th graders at Miller Ridge are headed to the Ohio State House. Yeah, for
Very
that.
nice.
Great.
All right, if there are,
And they may have a really funny chaperone join them,
Oh,
because I love
This
going
one.
to that stage.
oh,
No, it's very cool, right?
Yeah, it is. It's a beautiful building.
It is.
Gorgeous, yeah.
all right, if there is nothing, I think, Mr. Bertram, we're ready to vote.
All right, Mrs. Shiver,
yes.
Mrs. Stewart,
Yes.
Mrs. Mulligan?
yes.
Dr. Russo?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Under finance, we have the 5-year forecast. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Any questions that we did not already ask? Nothing within the last 40 seconds that you thought of? If there is nothing to Mr. Bertram, we're ready to vote.
Mrs. Stewart?
Yes.
Mrs. Mulligan?
Yes.
Dr. Russo?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Shiver?
Yes.
That takes us all the way to committee reports. Any committees that need to do some reporting?
We had a policy committee meeting on November 2nd, I do believe. It's been a while ago.
But didn't we already talk about, no, I guess we
It's
did.
been our
We
own
haven't,
meeting
no.
since
Oh,
being-
my
We only have
gosh.
1 meeting in November. I wasn't at that meeting, I had to miss, so I'm going to count on you ladies.
I thought you all reported on that.
Nice lullaby.
Yeah. Anything on policy?
You know, I have to stop and think of what we even looked at.
Was it in part on the
I'm hoping she
dogs?
has her notes.
I don't have my notes, you know?
My forecast is.
I missed that one, so I can't help
took them
you.
out of here, gosh, I'm thinking, there were some repetitions of what we had. Come on, Randy, help me.
Wow.
Is that where you?
Come on,
It's been a
Kathy,
while.
help me
The
out
dogs?
here.
Did you guys discuss the
It's-
dog policy?
I could've
We'd
sworn
already
we
finished the
talked
dog
about it.
policy.
That's all I had.
We can always bring it back in December
We're
with
gonna have
the
to
next
bring,
one we're gonna
yeah,
have.
we're gonna have to bring it back, because my notes are all, I took them out of this notebook when we went to Columbus, and, you know, all the policy things.
We'll get them together.
So, okay.
Yeah, talk about them
It
on
just-
December 20th,
No,
All right, then that takes us to.
18th.
November.
Nope, December. We only have 1 meeting in November and 1 in December.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
All right. All that tidied up. Mr. Moore, anything to report tonight under Board of Education reports?
Yes, just quickly, while the election was only a few weeks ago, it seems like it was quite a long time ago. Time does fly, but I just wanted to recognize, first, Mrs. Stewart. We still have 1 meeting together, but I just wanted to say it has been a pleasure working with you. I know that you will stay busy within the community, and I'm certain that you'll be connected to the district in many, many ways. So just wanted to recognize your service on the board and some of the changes that are coming to the board. Also wanted to say congratulations to Chris and Anita on the election. Been through a couple elections myself. They're always challenging. So congratulations, and I'm certain that you both will continue to do a very good job on the board. And then I also wanted to recognize Mrs. Snow, who is with us this evening. Look forward to getting to know her and work with her in the coming months. So congratulations to everyone in the election. And then lastly, happy Thanksgiving. Be safe. Have a great time with your family. Take time to enjoy your family, and wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving. That's all. Thank you.
Ms. Schreiber?
Yes, I do. I went to Columbus, and since I'm the legislative liaison, it was fascinating to go through this process. And the process of adding something new was very short this year. They had only changed like 6 lines of their document, but there was a lot of to-do about that. And then I went to the legislative update on the final day, and that was fascinating to me. We had 4 legislative assistants were there, and then the people that they work for, and it was Senator Catherine Ingram, Representative Adam Byrd, Senator Andrew Bremer, and then Mr. Brennan. He came in late. He was from Parma. They said this was a very slow year for Senate bills and House bills. There were very few introduced, and it's fascinating to me how these get, and I don't know all of them, but how they get in to be where they are. The first one was House Bill 206, which has to do with the 180-day expulsion for students. And I guess there was a district that had some trouble with a child bringing a gun to school. And according to the policy, he could come back in 180 days. And for whatever reason, they did not feel comfortable about bringing this child back without some specific rules and regulations. So that's being looked at, that it can possibly, based upon certain circumstances, and you can also come up with certain things that the child has to do during that 180 days. The second one had to do with evaluating teachers. That was House Bill 214. And that the evaluations have to be careful that they're not based upon certain beliefs that, not of what they're teaching, but of what their innate beliefs are about things. So that, we didn't have a lot of specifics on that, but that's House Bill 214. Senate Bill 162 was about providing evidence-based plan for students who score with limited proficiency in the schools. And they want to be sure that these ideas, or that the things that are supposed to be the time working with the students does not take away from their core instruction, that that sometimes people kind of fudge, maybe. So I'm not sure how that came about, but that's in consideration. Senate Bill 168 has to do with options to the Ohio test. They have some changes they're looking at in dyslexia screening, because I think anytime something new starts, things have to be cleaned up,
Right.
because it
Tweak
just
it.
becomes overwhelming. And so there are some changes they're looking at that. Then school bus safety, we know about that one, that the group is meeting. And they're looking at seat belts in buses, but of course, that, who's going to pay for, where will the cost lie? And so that's, they also made reference to the change from the Department of Education to the Department of Education and Workforce, is that right?
That's right.
Yes. I'm trying to think of what else. I think that's pretty much it. There was a lively discussion about this first one, about expulsions in school, and well, one of the legislators there was very intent on saying, yes, this is fine, but be sure it is applied across the board, okay? And I could tell where she was coming from on that one. So, well, it was fascinating. It was just fascinating. I could have listened forever. I like to know how these bills originated. And the only one, like I said, they really went into was that first one. And we also talked about attendance as an issue across
go.
the state. And one senator said, that he might even consider that we should pay children to come to school. And the other ones just gasped when he said that, so
I did put that in the forecast.
No. So, but it was interesting.
Yeah.
It was interesting to actually have these 4 people there to talk to us. And the nice thing is, the 4 assistants, I've already had communication with one of them.
Oh.
Even though they were nowhere in my district. But he was a very nice young man, and now I have somebody to attach
There
onto.
you go.
So it was good. And while I'm sitting in this and listening about bus safety, I don't know if you're going to say anything, Chris, but that was the moment that
Yeah.
that horrible accident happened with those children from Tuscarawas County. And during our time at the convention,
Yeah.
we saw the kids from Middletown. I mean,
Yep.
we've seen them in the past, the music kids who've gone there. We've seen the little ones
Yep.
there. They were wonderful. The Hope Squad boys were something else. I just love those 2 boys. And we saw all kinds of other children that are doing, the Fierce Females caught my eye. There was a group, I forget where they were from, Randy. Do you remember?
Oh, I can't remember.
The Fierce
but they were
Females.
so cute. 3rd graders.
They were
Yeah.
something else. The kids, I know we have a lot to work on, but we also have a lot to be proud of. We have lots going on, and just to see these children, I think, oh, if adults could be, could take a lesson from these children. They were wonderful. They were wonderful. So that's pretty much what I had to report from here. It was enjoyable. I feel like I learned more this time, and I was more hesitant about going. I thought, oh, this is going to be so boring, but it wasn't.
No,
It was
you just picked the right sessions.
fascinating. So, yeah.
I knew I was missing a treat. I hate that I could not attend. I was really looking forward to it. I hate that I missed that. What do I have? Well, I do want to congratulate Anita and Chris on their winning the seats for school board. I had a more fun than I thought I was going to have hanging out with Chris and Anita just during the campaign, the short campaign period. And I have another meeting yet to go. So I have enjoyed hanging out with you all so much. It's been so much fun, and I've learned so much more than I could ever bring to the board. I feel like I've taken away far more than I've given, but it's been a pleasure serving with all of you guys. It's been great. And want to congratulate Holly again for your win. I told her I feel like it's a kinship because one of my favorite persons in the world is her father-in-law, and love him dearly. So congratulations, and I think that's all that I have for tonight.
Ms. Mulligan?
Well, Marlena, you don't look as old as wise people do, but you are very wise. I always listen to you, and I'm glad that you'll still be contributing your passion and skills to with your CBI work. So we'll miss you. And tonight's meeting covered a lot. I enjoyed the presentation about the therapy dogs, and then the 5-year forecast wasn't too boring, and it even looks like we won't have to reduce ourselves to like therapy goldfish or anything, because the 5-year forecast is looking good. I didn't do anything this time about going to convention or anything, or I really didn't do much.
Thank you. All right, my turn. I'd like to congratulate a couple high school students who I saw on Twitter had announced where they're going to school. Curtis Fowler, who I know is a cross-country runner, is going to attend Wright State. He's a buddy of my son Evan. I know he's a nice young man and will do well at Wright State. And Bree Boyle is Youngstown State on cross-country also. And I think I mentioned her a meeting ago or a few meetings ago, just a really fine young person who represents Middletown extremely well and will do great work at Youngstown State. I want to thank Randy for organizing things for Capitol Conference. You always do a nice job making sure everything is easy for us to kind of check in and do all those things. I know there's a lot of behind the scenes work that goes into that. And like Anita, it was a enjoyable trip. It was a shorter trip for me to Columbus, but meeting our Hope Squad young people, the young people from Amanda, who the one young lady wants to be a fashion designer, got to know them pretty well in a short span of time. And the Midi Meal Machine made the trip up the road, which isn't probably an easy trip in that big box of a machine. It was nice to see. It was nice to see them there too. And like Anita, I think my favorite part is getting to see all the young people. And it was such a heartbreaking story to know that how it ended. And so my heart and prayers goes out to that community and those families that will never be the same. And just am thankful for our young people who made it there and back safely. And I appreciate Anita sitting through those meetings because I think I'm the backup for you, and you did such a nice job reporting it, and so I appreciate that too. Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Verlina. Thank you, others. And congratulations to Holly. I look forward to working with you, as I do Ms. Scheibert and the others. And I know you were very humble in your comments a minute ago. You shouldn't be, because you've done a lot in a short span of time, and you represent our district and our community extremely well, and I look forward to continue working with you in whatever capacity. And it was a really strong decision of our board to have you join us for this past year plus, and so thank you so much. And it was great standing out. It was a beautiful day. I would say out in the cold or rain, but it wasn't. It was a beautiful day, hanging out and interacting with our community on Election Day. So, Mr. Bertram, Ms. Hauser.
Well, I'd like to say congratulations, Holly. Looking forward to working with you. And like I said, I won't quiz you on that forecast stuff just yet. You're good to go. And Verlina, I'm not saying goodbye to you yet. We got another month and a half together, and I'm going to savor every second of it till we get there.
Thank you.
Capital Conference was a lot of fun this year. It was very well attended. I don't know exact numbers. I heard 7,000. I know last year we had 10,000, but I think it was more than 7,000 people. It seemed even more attended this year than it did last year. And the only thing I have to say is I had such a good time at one of our dinners that Anita had to suffer through it, and she probably learned more about me than she ever thought she would. So sorry. It was a good, fun, open discussion. It was a good time. And happy Thanksgiving to everybody. It's always a special time with family.
Yeah. Okay, I'd also like to say congratulations to Dr. Urso and Ms. Scheibert down there. We're going to continue working together. And Verlina, we've been working together for so long. I think we'll just keep on keeping on, right? So I think, I've been here 15 years, and I think we've been working together for 15 years in just different capacities. And just want to say thank you so much for showing up on Monday nights and contributing all that you've contributed. But like I said, we're just going to keep on keeping on. It just won't be at the board table, right? Right. And welcome, Ms. Snow. We're so glad to have you. Look forward to working with you as we continue in January. Also want to give a shout out. If you recall, November 2nd, we had the Orton-Gillingham National Curriculum representatives in the district. They were very impressed. I want to give a shout out to all of the staff members. We had 2 of them visiting our district. They were able to visit 3 different classrooms, see Orton-Gillingham, and we have rolled that out, and it's fully implemented in our classrooms. So that's a super proud moment for all of us, really, to be highlighted on a national level like that with Orton-Gillingham. Also want to say winter sports are up and running. So we've transitioned from spring into winter. And so hats off to everyone that made that happen. And then once again, also happy Thanksgiving. It's a special time. Enjoy your family. It's a time to celebrate family, priceless times, and just enjoy it. Students, you're going to be off Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and we surely look forward to seeing you back on Monday, November 27th. So everyone enjoy.
Thank you.
Yep.
I forgot one other thing. I went to the 7th and 8th grade band concert. My daughter was on the flute, and they sounded phenomenal. And so I just didn't want to forget that I love our music department. They do such a
They do a
nice
great job.
I think Claire was playing the flute. Sometimes she says she fakes it, but I think she was really playing this time. With that being said, is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Mr. Bertram.
All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.